Hello world, and welcome to another episode in our Galacticraft tutorial series. Today we'll be covering the basic machines and parts you'll need to get started with Galacticraft. So the first basic machine is the coal generator. This is the most fundamental way for us to generate power at the very beginning of the game. To create this, we're going to need to use some copper, some iron, an aluminum wire, and a furnace. And from there, we can provide it some coal. I just gave it one piece of coal, and I gave it an extra one there as well. And now we can see that it is generating the Galacticraft version of energy. Now you may have noticed that something odd was in that recipe. There is the aluminum wire. This is what we're going to need to use to connect our electrical machines. The recipe for this is pretty straightforward. There's just 3 ingots of aluminum surrounded by any color wool, and this will yield your 6 aluminum wires. Now every machine that uses electricity has an output or an input. So since this generates electricity, we have red for the output. And the circuit fabricator right next to it actually has green to indicate that that is where the input is for electricity. So the circuit fabricator here is used to make wafers. The recipe I have in here right now will provide you with 3 basic wafers. So you'll need diamond, silicone, redstone, and a redstone torch. The wafers are used to make some of the more advanced machinery, especially any of the electronics, and you will also need it to create solar panels later on in the game. So for this, the crafting recipe is a little bit more complicated. We have aluminum ingots, lever, 2 buttons, the wire, redstone torch, and a furnace. So here is a good time to note that normally you might be looking into the Galacticraft wiki, but this is where having the JustEnoughItems mod comes very handy. So of course I find these things to be incredibly hard to memorize. So you can, as long as you know the name of what you're looking for, you can look it up, and it'll show you the entire crafting recipe right here. So we were just looking at the circuit fabricator. As we know, that one was a little bit more on the complex side. And then say if you even forgot how to craft an aluminum wire. It's not a big deal, because from this screen you can even click on that to get the recipe for this as well. Now, to show this off in action, we're going to go ahead and connect these devices together and create ourselves a basic wafer. Now, you may notice that this is a little inconvenient to wrap all this wire around. So we can actually get around that by using a wrench. And we'll be going over momentarily how to make one of these wrenches. But it is pretty straightforward. We can go ahead and rotate this and connect them just like that. So this helps us to save on resources and makes things a little bit more cleaner. So as we can see, we now have our 3 basic wafers, now that it actually has electricity being supplied to it. Now moving on to the next component, this is the compressor. And the reason we had to make a wafer is because this is part of the crafting recipe. So this takes some aluminum ingots, an anvil, copper ingot in the middle, and a basic wafer on the bottom. The compressor is one of the most fundamental and important machines in the entire Galacticraft game. this is how you're going to be making a lot of your supplies. So over here we have showcased you can make compressed iron, compressed steel, copper, tin, bronze. These are the things you can start off with here on Earth. So let's have a look at what goes into this. Most compressed iron or metal recipes are actually just going to be 2 ingots. It's pretty straightforward. That will yield 1 compressed steel or iron plate in this case. And by the way, you may have noticed that I have these weird crafting tables here. Well, these are the magnetic crafting table from Galacticraft. I have not found a good practical use for them in game yet. However, if you do check it out, when you click on it, any supplies you had left in here will stay on the crafting table. So one way that I did find this to be useful is other players can check out the crafting table, and you can kind of work together with putting supplies down onto it. So some of the more unique compressed metal recipes include steel, which is compressed iron mixed with 2 pieces of coal. I don't believe the order for that necessarily matters. We also have compressed bronze. So this is compressed copper and compressed tin. And using some of these supplies that we have now learned about and created thus far, you should be able to craft yourself this wrench. So we have the compressed bronze and the compressed steel to yield our standard wrench, which we had mentioned earlier is great for rotating tools. The last most important thing to know about is the refinery. Now this converts your crude oil that you may find in your world into usable rocket fuel. You can just use vanilla buckets to pick up oil and then transport it over to your machine. You can pour it in, and we can now see that there are 1,000 units of oil in here with a maximum of 24,000. And we're going to be needing quite a bit of that to get into space and to safely come back. So that's it for the basics. There are definitely a lot more machines and parts that go into this, but as far as starting off, this is where you want to concentrate your resources. As I said, the compressor here is pretty important because you'll be using a lot of these compressed metals. Almost every single Galacticraft recipe will call for these. And I will warn you right now, you will need a lot of iron. So many recipes depend on iron and even steel. So, when mining, don't forget to get your iron. And in fact, you probably want to get a little bit of everything. That's all for today. On the next episode, I'll be covering some of the more advanced ways to generate power that don't necessarily involve the coal generator. So until next time, keep on mining.